Cordelia and I spend a lot of time on titles, and many discussions go into them. They're not chosen lightly, and actually with all our previous pieces, there's a whole backstory of how we got there. It's never the first title that we've had. Same for Like Flesh. It was chosen, it was proposed by Cordelia. We had discussed it for a while, but actually we had multiple ideas at first. But the title came quite early, in 2018, when Cordelia wrote the first little excerpt from the libretto, which at the time we didn't know it was even going to be in the libretto. If I remember correctly, it was something like, I dreamt the world cracked open like an egg, sent one lover to the other, and you came spilling out, like yolk, said the lover interrupting. No, said the dreamer, like flesh. And this little excerpt, which actually is in the libretto now, in a slightly different form, really stayed with us, actually. And it was the only bit of the libretto for about 2 years. And we both really liked the bit Like Flesh, and so it became the title. Ovid came at an interesting moment. The opera did not actually begin with Ovid. It was not Cordelia who said, I really want to adapt one of the stories from the Metamorphoses. Actually, the process was more that, as Cordelia and I have been working together since 2017, and as we were developing the ideas for the opera, Cordelia observed the themes that we wanted to explore and that we have been exploring in our previous work. And I remember actually the moment I was in London, I think it was 2018, end of 2019, we were sitting in her living room, and she said, Sivan, I had an idea. And I said, what is it? For the libretto. And she said, well, I decided, because I was looking at the themes that were transformation, human beyond human, earth, environment, our relationship to the environment, the destructive relationship with the environment. She said, I think I found a way to situate this new story that I'm going to write. And I'm going to situate it within the greater context of a mythology that we all know, and that's the Metamorphoses. So actually, this is how it came about. She looked at the themes, and then from there she thought, okay, how can I situate it so that the story, even though it's brand new, which for opera is not obvious because a new opera already is very new, how can I situate it in a way that the audience understands some greater context for it? And that's how she came to the Metamorphoses. And then within that, because we did another piece together after Arethusa, so it's the story of Arethusa, she started as part of her research and reading, she became very interested in trees, fungi, all these networks, these hidden networks, and through that she decided, okay, I'm going to focus on the tree myths. And originally in the libretto, actually, there were references to more than just Daphne and Apollo. There was also Mira, for example, so it was not the only one. But finally, she really decided to focus on the story of a woman who transforms into a tree, so inspired by Daphne and Apollo. As part of my work at IRCAM since 2018, a main partner for me here has been Augustin Müller, a computer music designer, or RIM as we say here at IRCAM. And we've been working together to develop both the setup that is positif for Like Flesh, but also a lot of the textures and the sounds that I then use to compose the electronic part. So we are here at IRCAM, and I can honestly say that IRCAM is artistically my home now for a few years. It's almost like my artistic family. And not a small thing to say, IRCAM has been the place where Cordelia and I have been able to create works together from the very beginning. Our first work together in 2017, You'll Draw Deer, was made here as part of the Cursus program. And in fact, all the works we've created have been influenced by the work that we've been developing at IRCAM. So my work with electronics, but also just the context of being able to grow here as an artist since 2016-17. One of the things that are unique, perhaps, to Like Flesh is that I began with the electronics. The electronics now are completely finished, but they were really the very basic building structure of this opera. In that sense, it's very much tied to the work and research I've been doing here, to the work I've also been developing with Augustin, and to the support that we've been receiving from IRCAM. When I speak of that support, for me, one of the things that are very unique to IRCAM is also the ability to develop a project over time. It's not just about the technology and about the tools and about the studios. It's about a structure, an institution that's able to support artists over a long period of time in their research in order to find a new musical language. it's true that in an opera, it's not finished until really the audience arrives, because that's when the first time all the elements really come together. So in that sense, an opera is unique. And so, of course, I'm finishing my part of the music, but I know that, in fact, the piece is not finished yet. And that's what I love also about opera and what's so exciting. About the diffusion, so the electronics, the way that I see them, and maybe this is a bit of an unusual way, is like a second orchestra. And I think of it very concretely in that sense. The sounds at their base are both concrete, so sounds that are recorded, and then a echoic chamber, fruits, vegetables, skins, things that are very much related to the earth. We can say a natural environment, but in a very poetical, abstract way. And the other hand, completely harmonic instrumental sounds that I put in categories, orchestral categories of winds, strings, percussion, and so forth. So in that sense, I would say that electronics are not just a second orchestra, but also a kind of hybrid augmented orchestra. And there are moments in the opera where they're by themselves expanding the space, they're completely blending with the ensemble, they're dialoguing, and so that relationship is really explored. The spatialization here is important because I say it's a second orchestra, but it has different potentials from a traditional orchestra. Even though we can take the analogy of 64 speakers, like an orchestra of 64 people, they're positioned really in the hall and under the seats. So we can think of them, and that's how I think of them in a dramaturgical, poetic way, as a kind of invisible orchestra. And in the story, we discuss very often this world that is invisible, this world that is imaginary, this world that is beyond what we can understand. And so the electronics as the second other orchestra is really expanding that imagination, which again, for me, is one of the interesting things about working with technology. It's about the sounds that we cannot yet imagine. The sounds that we think, okay, what can I make that will create this new experience, this new relationship to the space, but also a new relationship to the characters on the stage, because everything, the staging itself is frontal still. We're not going away from the frontal staging. However, we have an experience of the space that is beyond just frontal. Sometimes it's frontal, sometimes it's underneath and hidden, sometimes it's behind, sometimes it's completely around. So the configuration of the speakers is really tied to that dramaturgy. It's not a gimmick in of itself to just have a kind of experiential listening with the sounds that are there. It's really used and thought of dramaturgically within the context of the theme of the libretto. For Like Flesh, once it was commissioned by Opéra de Lille, we had the wonderful opportunity to discuss directors with Caroline Sondrier, the director of Opéra de Lille. And finally, after discussions also with Silvia Costa, whom she suggested, and then we went to see some of her shows. We're really thrilled to include her in the team. And she's become, for us, by this point, of course, an equal collaborator in this, together with also Maxime Pascal, the conductor, and the Ensemble Le Balcon. The forces, the total forces are, first and foremost, our three main characters. We have a woman, the forester, who is her husband. They're both an older couple who've been together for a long time. And then a young student who becomes the woman's lover, who is also the trigger of this metamorphosis. And these are the three characters that we see on stage. In addition to that, there is a vocal sextet, a vocal ensemble, which represents the character of the forest. And they contextualize the story very often, but also in the second half become their own character and begin to really interact directly with the characters on the stage, specifically the woman as she transforms into the tree and has a new relationship, a new understanding, and a new language with them. Then we have the ensemble. In the pit, we have 13 instruments. The ensemble includes also accordion and also a synth, in addition to doubling and keyboard and the strings and winds and brass, of course. This is also for the blending with the electronics, because then we have the electronic part, which is the speakers that are distributed in the space.